Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 222 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what are you up to?
Hey, man, what's going on?
I'm ready to do an amazing episode for the people. How about you?
You're such a renegade.
I know.
Or that song on the way to your house.
Renegade?
Renegade.
That's old school, man.
It is old school.
Every now and then you need a little bit of old school.
Yeah.
Because we've got a lot of new school. We need some old school. Every now and then.
Was that in a movie too or something?
What?
The Renegade stuff?
The song?
Well, the beginning of the song where they have the guy talking about, hey, renegades, mount up or whatever they say.
No, no. That's not Warriors, is it? Because I think that movie is old.
It was old. I loved that movie, though.
That was a cool movie.
I did like it.
Warriors.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We got some Patreon shout outs. Let's do those. We had Dale Lewis.
Hey, Dale.
Tiffany.
Hey, Tiffany.
Elisa Hunt.
What's up, Elisa?
Tally Gorunga.
Ooh, Taligoranda.
The Max Arrow team from Wichita, Kansas.
Man, what's up, the Max Arrow team?
Very specific.
Yeah.
Sally Erdang.
Hey, Sally.
Sherry Scipio.
Scipio.
Yeah.
Did it right, didn't I?
As opposed to our Patreon episode where you tried to reference the movie Serpico.
I did.
And said Scorpio, and it got all out of whack.
It's just all jacked up.
Ethan Napier.
Hey, Napier.
Kristen Bursey.
What's going on, Kristen?
Christy Holman.
Well, hey, Holman.
Julie Russell.
What's up, Julie?
Karina Flores.
Hey, Karina.
Stephanie Dewey.
Sup, Stephanie.
Chris Zeber.
Zebra?
Zeber.
Sounds like zebra.
Brittany Pasquale.
Hey, Pasquale.
Julie Hale.
What's going on, Julie?
You cracked yourself up there, didn't you?
Yeah.
John Linehan.
Hey, man, it's close to like John Lennon, but Linehan, it's kind of close.
Not really.
No.
Julie Hetty.
Hey, Julie.
Stacy Dobbins.
What's going on, Dobbins?
Mallory McCamish.
Hey, McCamish.
Victoria Ansell.
Thank you, Victoria.
And last but not least, Melanie Schneider.
Oh, Schneider in the house.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Hannah Cooper.
Cooper.
So we appreciate the new support, the continued support. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Lori McConaughey.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Probably related.
All right.
There you go.
Daniel Javier.
Hey, ooh, another Javier.
Kelly Duncan.
What's going on, Duncan?
Jill Suter.
Hey, Jill.
And Sarah Madej.
Hey, Madej.
So thanks to all of you as well. Gibbs right now on True Crime All the Time. We have an episode out on Winston Moseley.
We do.
A name that I think a lot of people probably won't be familiar with, but they will be familiar with one of the individuals that he murdered. Kitty Genovese, one of the most well-known murder victims in New York City's history. And this is a strange case. You know, newspaper reporting came out that stated 38 people witnessed or heard the crime and did nothing. That turned out to be false, but it's really what caused this case to be so well known. We have some new merch out on the website that people should check out. We've got some stainless steel TCAT straws. We've got a challenge coin that's
Like that.
really cool.
Yeah.
One side has the TCAT logo. The other side has the Unsolved logo. And it comes with a little stand that you can put on a shelf. Very cool. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We are headed back to Australia to discuss the 1973 unsolved murder of Bronwynne Richardson. Bronwynne Ann Richardson was just 17 years old when she was abducted and murdered in southern New South Wales in October of 1973. Throughout the 48 years, almost 5 decades, Gibbs, of investigation, not a single suspect has ever been convicted, despite the fact that some individuals have been arrested for the murder. And chillingly, there is evidence that suggests that it's likely there is more than one murderer in this case. Although there is speculation about the identity of the murderer or murderers, no one has been convicted for the murder of Bronwynne Richardson. On Sunday, October 14th, 1973, the body of a teenage Australian girl was discovered, dumped in the Murray River after she was abducted and assaulted. The victim was confirmed to be a young Albury teenager named Bronwynne Richardson. Bronwynne Richardson was born in 1956 to a family in Albury in southern New South Wales, Australia. She was a former teenage beauty queen, which caused some papers in Australia to dub the case the Beauty Queen Murder. Her family and friends greatly loved Bronwynne. Her family described her as fun-loving and the belle of the ball. Her sister, Fiona Hume, told ABC News that Bronwynne had her whole life ahead of her. Unfortunately, Bronwynne's life was cut short, leaving her family devastated. Fiona said, "The day that Bronwynne died shattered our family, shattered our mom and dad's hearts. The impact has destroyed our family. We grieve daily for Bronwynne and the life that she never got to live." And again, Gibbs, we talk about it, but how tough must this be? Because you have a young person, 17 years old, has not even really started life, hasn't even technically reached adulthood.
No, the journey is just starting
to begin.
Yeah.
And so that journey is cut short. I think as a parent, obviously you're devastated for the loss of your child. But then as the years go on, all the milestones that should have been, she's not around for.
No.
And I think you have to constantly wonder, what would she be doing now? What would her profession have been?
Right.
Would she have helped people?
Would she have had kids?
Yeah. Just all of it.
Yeah.
It's got to be a never-ending series of what ifs, what would have beens, and, what did we miss? It just seems to me like it has to be a continual heartbreak, one after another.
And for her family, it is.
According to the Canberra Times, Bronwynne Richardson was attacked and kidnapped on Friday, October 12th, 1973, after 7 p.m. in Albury. She was abducted outside a church on Smollett Street, at the border of New South Wales and Victoria. She was waiting to be picked up by her friend Charlie Kerr after she finished her shift at the Coles supermarket. Before Charlie arrived at the agreed-upon pickup spot, Bronwynne was snatched from the streets and put into a vehicle. On the Australian TV program Murder, Lies, and Alibis, Charlie Kerr expressed his regret. He said, "You don't know if I had picked her up on time, whether this terrible thing might not have happened."
Yeah, I hear what he's saying. He feels bad. He's maybe feels guilty.
Yeah, and I think that's a natural reaction, right? If you're a good friend and you're supposed to pick somebody up, now it sounds like he was a little bit late.
Yeah.
From what he told the television program, I think that's going to be really tough on you. The what ifs, could I have prevented this if I had only gotten there, X number of minutes earlier? it's tough to do to yourself, but I think for many people, it's unavoidable not to experience some of that and be very tough on yourself.
I mean, you're always going to second guess yourself at this point.
Yeah. Although the vehicle and its owner have not been identified, a brief description of the car was provided by witness testimonies. Accounts detailed that the vehicle was similar to a pale green and white side paneled 1961 Holden FB station wagon with Victoria plates. And this is not the first episode where we've talked about a Holden vehicle in Australia.
Yeah, very common type of vehicle.
And I don't remember exactly, Gibbs, but I thought we determined in a previous episode that Holden was actually made by Chevy. I could be wrong about that, but for some reason that's clicking in my head.
Looks like a Chevy.
A witness named Wayne Leach recounted that he saw Bronwynne being forced into a car with 4 men. Additionally, he heard Bronwynne recognize one of the men in the car. He remembered her saying, "Oh, it's you," to the driver of the car before she was abducted.
Well, that's important information.
It really is, because if that is true, then that means at least the driver, if not some of the other passengers, were not strangers to Bronwynne completely. At the very least, it sounds like she recognized the driver.
Yeah.
And knew who it was.
And that helps limit your pool of suspects.
Yeah. Police reports indicate that Bronwynne was transported to a reserve out of town called Horseshoe Lagoon, which was located 6 kilometers, a little bit less than 4 miles away from Albury. She was brutally raped, assaulted, and strangled to death before her body was dumped in the Murray River. And it was 2 days later, on Sunday, October 14th, that her body was discovered. She was found naked in the brush at Horseshoe Lagoon, located just off the Murray River. A witness came forward, recalling seeing a vehicle that night at Horseshoe Lagoon. And Gibbs, this witness turned out to be Bronwynne's mother, Noelle. She explained that when she drove past the lagoon, she noticed a pair of headlights. And there's no way that she could have known at the time that these headlights likely belonged to her daughter's killers. An autopsy was conducted to determine the cause of Bronwynne's death, and it was confirmed that the 17-year-old died of strangulation and drowning.
I mean, when you think about the fact that her mom possibly saw the killer's car, really eerie.
Well, it's eerie, and not only possibly saw the car, but what was going on at that time.
Yeah.
You know, thinking as a mother later on, once you find out that your daughter was killed, did you pass by as she was being killed, as she was being, dumped into this body of water? We talked about the friend and the guilt and the what ifs. Noelle's going to have all of that and more.
Yeah. What if I would have drove back there? What if I would have called somebody, said, "I see these headlights back in the lagoon, that maybe you might want to go check them out. Maybe they shouldn't be there."
Yeah. And again, I'll make the same statement. Most people wouldn't do that.
No.
Because there's nothing going on to their knowledge that would make them think they need to involve the police. But it's not going to stop the guilt. It's not going to make it any easier. You're still going to blame yourself, even though there's no reason to at all. But
right.
It's not going to stop it. That's my thought.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to keep thinking, I was this close.
The what ifs.
The what ifs are going to keep creeping up. During the investigation into Bronwynne's murder, the police were also looking into the murder of Jeanette Hannigan, which occurred on September 23rd, 1973. Jeanette was only 13 years old when she was kidnapped and murdered. Her head was bashed in and she was strangled to death, and her body was later found alongside a creek bed. But this wasn't the only two murders that police were looking into. They were looking into similar murders in several locations. Just the day before Bronwynne's body was found, the body of 19-year-old Gabrielle Jonke was found lying in brush near a local highway on October 13th. She was found naked from the waist down and had been sexually assaulted. Her head also had been bashed in with a blunt object. It was determined that she was killed a week before her body was found. Gabrielle's best friend, 16-year-old Michelle Riley, was with her when they both went missing. The police found Michelle's body a week later. On Tuesday, October 23rd, her remains were found just off a local highway. Her cause of death was determined to be a fractured skull. Newspaper reports stated that her dress had been pulled up around her neck, exposing a floral bra, and that the lower half of her body was completely naked. It was believed she had been sexually assaulted as well. Branches were placed over Riley's body in a makeshift effort to conceal her remains. The area in which both bodies were discovered was rural. The distance between the Jonke and Riley body dump sites was just 20 kilometers, about just a little over 12 miles apart. Witnesses recall seeing the girls get into a Holden FB wagon or van with white panels. And neither Jeanette's, Gabrielle's, nor Michelle's murders have ever been solved. All three remain a cold case. And Gibbs, I think there are some people who believe that these three cases are tied in some fashion to the murder of Bronwynne Richardson, while others feel they're separate and that these three were the victims of a highway hitchhiker serial killer.
Yeah, I mean, there's discussions about these murders all over the place out there on the internet, but even authorities at one point felt that Jeanette's murder and Bronwynne's were really pretty similar. They felt you could really tie them together because of the location and how the murders were committed.
Well, to me, this is very scary because you have 4 murders of young girls, young women that occur in just about the span of 1 month.
Yeah.
So I can see where people would try to tie these 4 together, based on the circumstances of the crimes and all of that. So if we get back to Bronwynne's case, the local government offered a reward of $20,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of her killer. And Gibbs, we're talking about 1973. That is a lot of money.
That is. That's a big chunk of change.
You and I have done cases in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s where, a couple of $1,000s is offered as a reward. $20,000 is a chunk of money in 1973.
And we've seen in Australia that their reward money's on the heavy side in a good way.
Yeah, well, it's smart.
Yeah.
If you want to solve crimes, and you should, if you're the police, the authorities, you need to offer some type of reward. You and I have talked about it countless times. What makes people come forward?
Yeah.
Who do not want to come forward, who are, reluctant to come forward, reluctant to roll over on someone they know, money.
Yeah.
And quite a bit of it sometimes it takes.
And it's worth it because you're only going to pay out if you get the conviction. So there has to be some really good evidence, some really solid stuff that you can use that will get you to the table,
And the one thing that I think about is, as a government, police force, whatever, you're really showing the community that, hey, we're not messing around. We're throwing a lot of things, effort, money, personnel. We're serious about solving this murder. And I think that's important. You need to show the community that you are working towards solving the crime, not just, holding press conferences and giving lip service.
Right. Well, look, the bigger the amount, the more people are going to come out of the woodwork to talk to you. Are they going to lead to a conviction? Probably not those individual leads, but you're going to have all those additional leads that you now can follow and eventually get to the spot where maybe you will get a conviction, not from that particular lead, but when you weave them all together, you have a much better case.
Yeah, that's actually a great point you're making, because that $20,000 does so much more than just get the one lead that leads you to the killer.
Right.
You're going to get a bunch of leads that you're not paying anything for.
Exactly.
Now, you're going to have to spend time and effort chasing those leads down, but would you rather have the leads or be sitting on the sidelines wondering, where do we go next?
Right. It's unlikely that you'll get the slam dunk right out of the gate.
Sure.
But
you could.
You could.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
In November of 1973, the police released a sketch of a person of interest to the press. This male was described as 27 years old, 5'11", very thin, with a pointy nose, very pale, and having brown shoulder-length hair.
Yeah, the sketch is not very flattering. I saw the sketch. It almost looks like more like one of those caricature. Yeah, one of those drawings.
Yeah, it's a very tough word to say.
For me, every word's tough.
But no, I get that. I think sometimes composite sketches can be like that. Some are very, very accurate.
Yeah.
Once the killer is actually found, some are not. And again, I'm sure some sketch artists are better than others, and they're only as good as the input that they get.
That's true.
So, I don't think I would be very good at giving information to a sketch artist that would allow them to make an accurate drawing. I'm not good at describing people. I'm looking at you right now. And if I had to describe your nose, I don't even know what I would say.
I wouldn't either. I was thinking the same thing. I wouldn't even know how to tell them how to draw you.
It looks like a normal nose. Just put down a normal nose.
I mean, I guess these people that do this are probably good at pulling information out of people.
Well, I think that's probably a big part of it. They're trained to really hone in on the details and kind of draw the information out of the person in a way that makes it usable. But again, it's like a lot of things, right? Something is only as good as the input. In 1977, the police interviewed a guy named Jeffrey Charles Brown. It was known that Jeffrey and Bronwynne were high school sweethearts for a couple of years. So right away, Gibbs, you would think that police would want to talk to this individual.
Sure.
Bronwynne broke up with Jeffrey in May of 1971. During questioning, Jeffrey was able to provide an alibi. He said he was at the Walla Hotel and then at the Barum Buttock pub.
Sounds like a fun pub to me.
That's a mouthful.
It's
for sure.
It's something, all right.
It is. But he had an alibi. I think that's the key. So he was released after the questioning, but we'll come back to him again later on in the episode. One of the things I do want to talk about, Gibbs, so they dated up until 1971. Bronwynne was killed in 1973. So, that's a span of time.
Yeah, 16, 18 months in between there.
And he wasn't interviewed until 1977.
It's quite a time to wait.
Yes, 4 years or so after the murder. I found that somewhat strange.
Certainly giving people time to craft their stories.
I think if you can't craft one within 4 years, you probably are not able to.
Yeah.
Because that's a long time.
It is a long time.
You could write a number of books. Stephen King could write about 37 books in 4 years.
James Patterson would write about 3,000 books in that period of time. I think he comes out with a new book every Friday.
According to the Canberra Times, in 1989, the police department identified 4 possible suspects in the murder of Bronwynne Richardson. The suspects were Jeffrey Brown, Kevin Newman, Max Martin, and Ross Eames. This list of suspects was put together from an anonymous call received by the police. The phone call was made after a television show which covered the murder of Bronwynne. An unidentified man called the police from a phone booth in Murray Bridge near the Murray River. The phone call contents involved the man confessing the fact that he participated in the beating, sexual assault, and murder of Bronwynne Richardson, along with 3 others. But to this day, the caller's identity has never been confirmed, though some people believe it was Ross Eames.
So you're going to call the police and give them the 4 names, and you're going to be one of the names?
Yeah, that seems strange to name yourself.
Yeah.
But it would even be strange to name 3 people and say that you were part of it. I mean, are those 3 people not going to be able to tell the police who the 4th perpetrator was?
Exactly.
I don't get it.
I mean, if he felt that much guilt, because I'm assuming he felt guilt is why he called.
Doesn't seem like there would be any reason to call but that.
So why not go ahead and say, I'm going to come in with my attorney, I have something I need to tell you, or just go into the station with your attorney and just do it that way.
Or cut a deal.
Yeah, make a deal. You know, you're one of 4, if that's the truth. I'm pretty sure there's a deal to be made.
Like you always say, usually the person that comes forward first gets the best deal.
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit strange, I have to admit. But one of the listed suspects was Jeffrey Brown, who we just talked about. He was interviewed in 1977, but he had an alibi that appeared solid. Max Martin was an ex-convict who was sentenced to prison on charges of pedophilia and rape in the late 1960s. According to documents, Max was released from prison on October 12th, 1973.
Interesting.
The very day that Bronwynne died.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think just based on that fact alone, police would want to talk to this guy.
I would hope so.
They did speak to Max Martin in 1990. He denied being in Albury. Max was let go after his police interview, and as far as I could tell, Gibbs, there really was no further investigation into him. But that same year, 3 men were charged in relation to Bronwynne's murder: Ross Eames, Kevin Newman, and Jeffrey Brown. The police wanted and needed Ross Eames and Kevin Newman to testify that Jeffrey Brown killed Bronwynne, but they both refused, and the case couldn't move forward. Max Martin died in 1995, and it was after his death that it was proven that Max had taken a train to Albury the day Bronwynne was abducted and later murdered. Apparently, this was confirmed by Colin Newey, Bronwynne's cousin. Colin told police he had lunch with Max on October 12th at the Coles cafeteria while Bronwynne was working. Colin told police Max just appeared evil, but none of the 4 suspects that the caller informed the police about were ever convicted, and Bronwynne's case went cold. But I think, Gibbs, we got to break this down a little bit more.
There's a lot of information there.
There is. So you have these 4 people mentioned by an anonymous caller. Some people believe it was Ross Eames. They questioned Max Martin, and then basically nothing else. It comes out after his death that he was in Albury,
Yeah.
according to at least one person, on the day that Bronwynne was killed. And so that's very interesting. But what is also interesting is that Ross, Kevin, and Jeffrey were charged. Based on what, we don't know.
Right.
Couldn't really find that. I'm assuming there wasn't much to it because once the police learned that Ross and Kevin were not going to roll over on Jeffrey, the case fell apart.
Yeah, you're right. We don't know what they have. Maybe they're holding it back. Maybe they don't have anything, because I know that she was found in the river. Maybe that could have washed away some potential evidence. The thing is, like you said, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, to me, what it seems like, and again, this is just my opinion, it's kind of what it seems like on the surface, is that police really believe Jeffrey Brown had some involvement and they wanted to pin this murder on him. But they couldn't do it without Ross and Kevin turning on him. And once they decided that they weren't going to do that, and maybe they had no reason to, I don't know.
Right.
But once they decided not to do that, the case, completely fell apart. And I think that tells you a lot about what they had.
And to go back to Max Martin, knowing what his criminal history was before, and he was a really strong suspect, I would think.
So he was a bad guy.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And then, you have to wonder. That would be, to me, the coincidences of all coincidences that Bronwynne Richardson is murdered on the day that he's released from prison. Someone says they had lunch with him in Albury the day that she was murdered.
In the store she worked at.
Yeah, at the cafeteria that she worked at. The problem is some of that came out after he died.
Yeah.
So what are police going to do at that point? Now you wonder why they kind of, let the investigation on him kind of go after they questioned him. It seems as though they were so satisfied, but they couldn't figure out that he was in Albury the day that she died.
Yeah.
I don't know. Strange. In 2008, the case was reopened by organizing a special task force dedicated to the investigation in hopes of capturing the culprit or culprits. The task force was named Strike Force Coolaman. Okay. It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Very powerful name. The problem is the progression in the case was very slow. The task force struggled to find clues or information about Bronwynne's murder. In May of 2010, the government upped their reward to $200,000 for any details that assisted in an arrest. Again, a lot of money. Now, a lot of time has passed, but that's still a lot of money in 2010, $200,000. I think the thought on the part of police was that they believed that someone in the town was likely to have witnessed something significant regarding Bronwynne's murder. Okay, how do we draw this person or these people out that have some knowledge? Like you and I have said, offer up a reward.
Yep.
Sometimes that will draw individuals out. People will do a lot for money. We know that.
Oh, for sure. And you've said it in the past. Sometimes what police feel would be significant might feel insignificant to the person that has the information. Might be a little tiny piece of this or that. But once they tell the police, it finally fills in that void, that blank, and now they can move forward on something. So it's significant to them. That's why if you know anything, you should just always come forward, no matter how small it is.
Yeah, I think that is true when somebody has heard something, they weren't involved in it in any way. Because obviously, if you're involved in the murder, you know what is significant and what is not.
For sure.
But if you had no involvement in the murder at all, let's say you overheard something that you weren't supposed to hear. Well, does that mean anything to you? Whatever that nugget is, Most likely not.
Right.
But it, like you said, it could be very significant to police. In late 2011, another investigation was held, which revealed that Jeffrey Brown had sufficient time to murder Bronwynne Richardson. While the timeline of Jeffrey's alibi was under review, it was found that there was a gap in his alibi, which would have allowed him to travel to Albury from Walla and back to Burrumbuttock. That's just fun to say. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Getting it tattooed on my shoulder.
You should.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means, but I like it.
I'm sure one of our listeners will be like,
no, you don't want
that.
You don't want that on your shoulder. According to Jeffrey, he was at the Walla Hotel on the night of Bronwynne's murder before traveling to the pub. Witness testimonies narrowed his timeline to the two locations at the times of 6:15 and 8:10 p.m. The problem is, during this latest investigation, the police realized that it could have been possible for Jeffrey to visit the victim, Bronwynne, before heading to the pub at 8:10 p.m. So I think, on the part of police, using that reasoning, it was possible for Jeffrey to be involved in the death of Bronwynne Richardson. His alibi no longer precluded him or eliminated him from being a suspect.
That's a perfect way to say that. Yeah.
Now, it's strange that we're talking about this so many years later because the guy had already been charged once before.
Right.
So, again, could they not have figured that out back then?
You would think they should have been able to.
So, these little things I'm struggling with, right? You're going to charge somebody when you haven't poked a sufficient hole in their alibi.
Right.
But you're able to years later. You're going to dismiss this convicted felon and really just kind of drop it when later on there's a witness that comes forward who says he had lunch with them that day. According to ABC News Australia, Horseshoe Lagoon was a familiar place to Jeffrey. According to Wendy Sim, who was Jeffrey's girlfriend at the time Bronwynne was murdered, he took her to Horseshoe Lagoon and showed her a location that he often visited. The location turned out to be the site of Bronwynne Richardson's murder. During the second investigation, it was reported that Jeffrey was not happy about Bronwynne breaking up with him. He reportedly started acting oddly and allegedly made some threats towards her. One of Jeffrey's previous girlfriends told police that when she broke up with him, he got mad and acted strangely towards her. He began stalking her, and she feared for her safety. So, these are all things that don't make Jeffrey look great.
No, definitely hurts his character.
Yeah, there's no way around that. The problem is police just did not have enough evidence to charge him. I don't think they had enough to charge him the first time, to be honest with you. No. But they obviously, at this point, during this second investigation, they're uncovering a lot of circumstantial type stuff, but it's nothing that you're going to, on its own, put in front of a jury, and that jury is going to say, oh, yep, you've proved to us that he killed her.
Yeah,
there's no way.
It's no smoking gun.
No, not at all. Not even if you put it all together.
Right.
It's not even smoldering. But at the same time, it doesn't make this guy look good at all.
No, not at all.
But there's a lot of people that don't look good, and that doesn't mean that they're a killer.
Right. It means they're an ass.
Yeah. They just don't look great, and they've done some things that are suspect.
Yeah.
On July 31st, 2014, another suspect was charged in the murder of Bronwynne Richardson. The detectives charged 61-year-old Colin Newey, Bronwynne's cousin, with her abduction, rape, and murder.
Interesting, right? I mean, he's the one that said, hey, I had lunch with that Max guy. He was in town on that day.
So what's the reason for somebody to make that statement? In my mind, there's only two things. Number one, it really happened.
Right.
went down the way that he said it did, or it didn't happen at all, but he's trying to throw the suspicion onto Max Martin, who at that point has already died.
Yeah.
And can't contradict his story at all.
If you can deflect it over to him, the guy that has a criminal record that looks bad, maybe you get them thinking that's who did it and just kind of write it off.
The detective superintendent revealed that 2 witnesses came forward and provided new information. The police discovered a connection between Colin Newey and the anonymous phone call made 25 years earlier. Colin was arrested in his hometown of Adelaide. He was transported to New South Wales to confirm his charges of the abduction, rape, and murder of Bronwynne Richardson. Colin Michael Newey, who was Bronwynne's second cousin, had a criminal history of theft, burglary, assault, arson, bail jumping, and drug manufacturing.
Built himself up a nice little resume over the years.
Yeah, he had a rap sheet. He wasn't a stranger to criminal activity, that's for sure. A childhood friend of Colin's, a guy by the name of Billy Flack, told the Canberra Times that Colin, quote, had a strange obsession with Bronwynne. He said that when he asked Colin about Bronwynne's murder, Colin responded saying, I wouldn't mind getting onto that. I wouldn't mind doing that. Okay. If that's true, and he actually made that statement, that's bizarre.
And sick.
And sick at the same time. After being arrested, Colin Newey quickly denied the charges. He also denied the testimony by his childhood friend, Billy Flack. Colin said he had no interest in Bronwynne at all. And according to him, she was, quote, a bit of a tardy type. So I'm taking that to mean, Gibbs, that he was insinuating that she went out with a lot of guys. I've never used the word tardy.
No.
I've heard the word tart.
Right.
It's definitely derogatory in the way that I've heard it used before. And I think that's the way he's using it.
I believe that too.
But here's the problem that I think police had with Colin. First of all, his testimony had changed throughout the investigation. In the beginning, he denied seeing Bronwynne the week of her murder. Then he changed his story, admitting that he had visited with her on the day she was killed.
Yeah, while he's having lunch with Max.
Yep, so that's a difference. In a previous police interview, Colin Newey noted that he saw Bronwynne around 4 or 5 p.m. that day. But Colin denied being anywhere near the murder site on the night of October 12th. He claimed that he attended a weekend army event. But this claim was refuted by Colin's brother, Peter. According to Peter, he had arranged for Colin to pick him up from a hospital the night of October 12th, but Colin never showed up. So I think the question then became, Gibbs, if Colin didn't show up at the hospital, where was he?
Sure.
The day that Bronwynne Richardson went missing. Fiona Hume, Bronwynne's sister, has said that she believes Colin was present at her murder. According to the Australian TV show Murders, Lies, and Alibis, Fiona said that when Colin became the number one suspect and every piece of the puzzle fit together, an incredible weight was lifted.
Probably did feel good for her and her family. Maybe we're going to get some closure here and some arrests, and some people will pay for what they did.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, this happens in a number of unsolved cases that we do. And it always has to be very tough on the family. When police close in on a suspect, when they charge someone, like you said, there's got to be some major relief there.
Oh, yeah.
We're finally going to get answers. Someone is finally going to pay for what they did. And then as things start to fall apart, then that relief has to turn to even more despair, right? It's this cycle of up and down, the highs and lows. My thought is the lows keep going lower because every time you think you're about ready to get the answers, your hopes are dashed and your emotions go even lower than they were before.
Oh, yeah. And you probably have to ask yourself, how do we recover from this?
Yeah. Yeah. And really, that's exactly what happened with Colin. You know, the case against him got weaker and weaker. The prosecutor was not confident that they had sufficient evidence to go to trial. So the charges against Colin were dropped on November 3rd, 2015. Afterward, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions reviewed the court case. It stated that there was no reasonable prospect of conviction with the currently available evidence, which was why the charges were dropped.
Not too surprised there, really, knowing how they dropped the case against Jeffrey years prior. I mean, it just doesn't seem like they really had any strong evidence.
No, because we didn't talk about any strong evidence. So either they didn't release it or they just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning towards the fact that they didn't have it. You know, they're kind of getting this circumstantial type stuff. Well, he could have been there. There was a window.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not enough. You can't convict people on that. And I go back to Bronwynne's sister Fiona saying it was such a relief when all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. I never saw where the pieces fit together. Now, maybe she was just saying, well, police charged him, so they must have had something at that point. They must have put the pieces of the puzzle together, but I don't think they ever did.
I agree with you.
I think also, Gibbs, what was at issue surrounding Colin was there was doubt about whether he was the person who had phoned the police and named the 4 suspects. But I think there's no doubt, Gibbs, that once the charges were dropped against Colin, it was a tough blow on the entire Richardson family. And basically, Bronwynne's case went cold again. In June 2019, the New South Wales government increased the reward money from $200,000 to $1 million for vital information into the murder of Bronwynne Richardson.
Well, if there's anybody just sitting around saying, you know what, 200,000 is just not enough, maybe this 1 million will get them out of the woodwork.
That is a boatload of money. Additionally, the investigation into the murder of Bronwynne was renewed. The state's homicide squad was given the task to reinvestigate. In particular, the investigators were seeking details about the vehicle that Bronwynne was dragged into, and they set about to do this by conducting new interviews. As you said, Gibbs, the increase in reward money was expected to encourage someone to come forward. And maybe it wouldn't be a person who knew exactly who the killer was, but maybe it was a person who could identify the owner of this car.
I think the problem for me is this is 2019. I mean, this all happened back in 1973. I don't know how good your memory is going to be about what a car looked like.
Who owned what car back in 1973. Yeah, it's tough.
And how many witnesses are going to be around at this point?
Yeah, 46 years later, I don't know. You know, for me, I don't know how much investigating they did back then into the owner of the car. I'm sure they did. You would hope they did. You would hope they didn't wait 46 years to try to figure out who owned that car. Because you know it's tougher. 46 years later, there's just no doubt about it. Although the role Colin played in the murder of Bronwynne Richardson's death is still a mystery, her family is convinced that he was involved with her murder in some way. On the show Murder, Lies, and Alibis, Bronwynne's father, Stan, aired a video message appealing to the suspect to tell the police what he knew and to do the right thing. Colin Newey's brother, Pete, confessed that he was torn about his brother's guilt. The show interviewed Bronwynne's sisters and her mother. They recalled that the facial composite done back in 1973, which was suspected to be of the murderer, resembled Jeffrey Brown back in 1973. And a guy by the name of Lynn Pendrick, who was friends with Max Martin's brother, revealed that Max had confessed to the murder. He said Max had confessed his participation in the crime to his brother, which was then later relayed to Lynn. So, Gibbs, you've got people thinking that it's at least 3 different people.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first witnesses back in 73 said a car of 4 guys abducted her.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know?
Can't lose sight of that. It's interesting that the unidentified caller named 4 suspects. Now, Colin was not one of the 4. So, Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, to me, this is a fascinating one. Unfortunately, the murderer or murderers have never been convicted or, obviously officially identified. You can't do that unless you get a conviction. All of the main suspects insist on their innocence. Colin Newey took a lie detector test to prove his innocence, which he allegedly passed. Now, Colin passed away recently. So if he was involved, and that's a big was,
right,
then he took any secrets he might have had with him to the grave. But that's 2 people that were looked at pretty hard who have since passed away. And again, I think this is what we see in some of these older unsolved cases. People die. I mean, when you get 46, 48, 50 years after a murder, assuming that the murderer was, let's say, at least 18 years old, okay, you're talking about people who are now close to 70 years old, maybe 80 if they were, a little bit older.
Yeah.
To date, no one has been convicted or brought to justice for the death of Bronwynne Richardson. Bronwynne's sister, Fiona Hume, has said that she hopes investigators get the information they need to deliver justice. And I absolutely get that, Gibbs. I don't care if it's 50, 60, 70 years. The family is never going to stop wanting to see justice be done. It's just not going to happen. I think we have to go back and talk about some of the unsolved murders that we mentioned earlier in the episode that occurred in 1973, in and around that area. There are some people that believe they're all linked to some highway hitchhiker serial killer. But I will say this, I don't think that the police believe that Bronwynne's murder is connected to the other ones that we talked about, because they have said that they believe they know who killed her. They just don't have the evidence to close it out. Now, they haven't said who it is, who they believe it is.
Right.
The problem I have with that is they've believed it to be a number of people. They charged quite a few people.
Also, I saw a ABC News video from Australia where they were talking to the one sister, and on the headstone, it doesn't have RIP. And she was saying they will never put RIP on her headstone or her father, who passed not too long ago, because until they solve this case, neither her or her father will ever rest in peace. And I thought that was interesting, that this is where the family's at. Bronwynne is not resting in peace and never will until this case is solved. And none of us will rest in peace either. I just found it kind of sad.
It is sad, but that's what you get from some of these cases, right? The family is devastated.
Yep.
That sadness, I don't believe, ever goes away. And I think what you just said exemplifies it. They don't believe that Bronwynne can rest in peace. They don't believe that the dad can rest in peace. Now, if somebody is convicted, they'll go back and put it on.
Yeah.
And they may do that with other family members who pass away before this case is solved. But I think that just highlights the grief. And, we're almost 50 years on. It never ends for the family.
No. Nope.
That's it for our case on the murder of Bronwynne Richardson. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey guys, it's Aubrey from Denver again. So I was listening to the last Unsolved episode last night, and Mike, I think you mentioned the possibility of someone coming up behind her with chloroform, and that's actually, I almost have my bachelor's in chemistry, and that's actually mostly a Hollywood myth. It takes upwards of 5 minutes to knock someone out with a chloroform rag. If they're a healthy adult, less so if they're like a kid or elderly or small, but also it would still take a few minutes. So, yeah, I just thought you guys might like to know that because it's a quite common misconception. It would give her a pretty killer headache, though, but in terms of knocking her out, definitely the hand over the nose and mouth would be a lot more likely. Especially since it would only probably knock her out for about 10 minutes after they held it on for over 5 minutes. It's not that helpful of a thing to do. You're more likely to kill somebody with chloroform by putting it over their face while they're asleep, or to knock them out with it by having them drink it or something of the sort. Yeah, so thank you guys so much again for all you do, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Now, why do I feel like we're going to have Experiment Friday here? You're going to have some chloroform. You're going to make me hold it over my mouth and nose and keep a clock running. And
just to see if what she says is correct.
Yeah.
No, you and I love that because, we get that type of stuff from movies. In the movies, chloroform is like, boom, you're done. You're out. And we love hearing from people who have that expertise, that knowledge. It helps us out. Now, hopefully I remember that the next time I talk about chloroform, but yeah. I'm not making any bets on it.
Probably have better odds just using one of my t-shirts after I get done working out.
to knock somebody out. Maybe.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is, my name's Roxy, and, I've been listening to your guys' podcasts, and I just wanted to say, they're very interesting, and you guys always make my day with the podcast. I was actually just listening to the one about the River Valley Killer on Unsolved, I think it's called. Oh, the Connecticut River Valley Killer. And the part where Gibby says that, somebody living 4 doors down from you can be a serial killer. It's actually funny because my sister and I were just talking about it the other day, and there's a house maybe 2 blocks over. My sister was just saying, oh, well, they could be some serial killers. And I was just asking her why, and she just gave me all these reasons, and I was like, oh, okay, well, there might be. But I just wanted to say I love your guys' podcast, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Hey, there's no way to definitely prove that she's wrong.
This is exactly right.
So just stay away from that house.
Yeah.
If you've got that feeling, and make sure you have your TCAT whistle with you at all times.
Right. And keep that head on a swivel.
How's it going, guys? It's Thomas from Lakeland, Florida. I'm calling again. I have a question. I wonder why all these people that have passed away, why don't they put their DNA in the code, and maybe it can help clear out a lot of these, unsolved crimes and help solve it and help these families that are, having tragic losses because maybe the person passed away. Well, if the DNA was in the CODIS, then they can be eliminated. It was just a thought. Y'all stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All right. Thanks for the voicemail. I'm not an expert, Gibbs, but my assumption is that the person would have to give consent, or at the very least, their family would have to give consent. Very similar to, you putting your DNA in one of these databases while you're alive. Okay, well, you have to consent to that.
Sure,
I don't think the government can just arbitrarily take the DNA of everyone that passes away. Now, if we could do that, he's right. We would solve a lot of crimes.
Well, I think so too.
We'd also find out that some of our dear loved ones were maybe, some bad people back in the day.
Not so dear?
No, they're still dear, but boy, they did some bad stuff.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Raina from Utah. I just wanted to say that I love your guys' podcast, and I got even my friends who weren't into true crime at first, I've got them hooked on it, and it kind of got me thinking about how you guys do a whole podcast about this stuff, and it just got me thinking, how did you guys get into true crime, and what cases or what really got you into the whole true crime scene? Because I really didn't get into it until my friend introduced me to it, and now I'm obsessed with it. Just thank you guys for always being so respectful and always thinking about what you say. You guys are awesome. You guys are so funny. So thank you guys. Keep your own time ticket.
All right. Well, very nice. Thank you for that voicemail. So I'll keep it brief, Gibbs. I know you and I have talked about this on Patreon and Q&As and things like that. For me, it started very early, probably too early, 9, 10, 11. And I'll just say, shows like American Justice, Bill Curtis, people like that, City Confidential. I just couldn't get enough of those shows and those stories.
You were fascinated.
I was fascinated. And then later on, I started reading books, Helter Skelter and some of the older books. And that's how it happened. All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.